1 week ago, my husband drove to our daughter's house. 3 days later, I still couldn't reach any of them. David always calls. Every night at 8, like clockwork. But Wednesday passed, Thursday passed, Friday morning, my phone stayed silent. I called Sarah's number 15 times. David's phone went straight to voicemail. Marcus, my son-in-law, didn't answer either. Saturday morning, I got in my car and drove. 2 hours, gray sky, hands shaking on the wheel. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I pulled into their driveway just after 10. The house looked normal, lawn mowed, porch light still on from the night before. David's car sat in the driveway, exactly where he would have parked it. But something felt wrong. Then, I saw her. Mrs. Patterson, their neighbor, running across her yard toward me. She was breathing hard. Phone clutched in her hand. Her face was pale. "Mrs. Reed," she called out. "Thank God you're here. I've been trying to call you." I got out of the car. "Where's Sarah? Where's David?" She shook her head. Her eyes were wide. Frightened. "I don't know," Mrs. Patterson said. She was still catching her breath. "But you need to see this photo first. Before you knock on that door." She held up her phone. Her hand was shaking. I stepped closer. The screen showed a photo, dark, grainy, taken at night through a window. I could see 2 figures in Sarah's driveway, loading something into the back of a black SUV. Something large, wrapped in a blue tarp. One of the figures was Marcus. I recognized his build, his jacket. The other man was bigger, broader shoulders, shaved head. I'd never seen him before. "When was this taken?" I asked. 2 nights ago. Thursday, around 2 in the morning, Mrs. Patterson's voice was tight. I couldn't sleep. I looked out my window and saw them. They were carrying that thing from the house to the car. It took both of them. I stared at the photo. My throat went dry. "I haven't seen Sarah or your husband since Wednesday," she continued. "Only Marcus. And he's been different, avoiding me. Thursday morning I tried to ask about Sarah. He opened the door just a crack and said she was resting. Then he shut the door in my face. I looked at the house again. All the curtains were drawn. In the middle of the day. Sarah never did that." Mrs. Patterson leaned closer. "Mrs. Reed, I'm worried. Something's not right here." I walked toward the front door. My stomach was knotted. Mrs. Patterson stayed close behind me. I knocked, waited. Knocked again, harder. No answer. But I could feel it. Someone was inside, watching through the peephole. I knocked a 3rd time. Harder. My knuckles hurt. "Sarah? David? It's Mom. Open the door." Nothing. But I was certain now. Someone was behind that door. I could sense eyes on me through the tiny glass circle. Mrs. Patterson stepped up beside me. "Should we call 911? I hesitated. If this was all a misunderstanding, if David and Sarah were just sleeping, if their phones had died, calling the police would be humiliating. Sarah would be embarrassed. Marcus would think I was overreacting. But that photo, the wrapped object, the middle of the night activity, the silence. "Call them," I said. While she dialed, I tried the door handle. Locked. I walked around to the side gate. Also locked. I went to the back of the house and looked through the kitchen window. Nothing unusual. Clean counters, empty sink. Then I moved to the living room window. The curtains were drawn, but there was a small gap at the bottom. I pressed my face against the glass and peered through. The room was dim. I could make out the couch, the coffee table. But something was wrong. A chair was knocked over. A pillow lay in the middle of the floor, and on the white carpet near the hallway, there was a dark stain. My heart started hammering. I pulled out my phone. Tried calling Marcus. It rang. 5 times. Then someone picked up. "Hello?" His voice was low, careful, cold. "Marcus, it's Linda. I'm at your house. Where's Sarah? Where's David?" Silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing. "Marcus, answer me. Where are they?" More silence. Then he spoke. Each word deliberate. You shouldn't have come here, Linda. You really shouldn't have come here. The line went dead. 10 minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled up. I stood there holding my phone, blood rushing in my ears. Mrs. Patterson came around the corner. What did he say? I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up. 2 patrol cars arrived, lights flashing. 4 officers got out. I met them on the front lawn and explained everything. My husband visiting 4 days ago. The silence. The neighbor's photo. Marcus's threatening words. One officer looked at the photo on Mrs. Patterson's phone. His expression changed. He turned to his partner. We need to check inside. They approached the front door, knocked hard, announced themselves. Police! Open the door! No response. The officer in charge looked at me. Ma'am, based on what you've told us, we have reason to believe someone inside may be in immediate danger. We're going to make entry. I nodded. They used a battering ram. 2 hits, and the door frame splintered. The door swung open. A smell hit me immediately. Metallic, sour, stale air that hadn't moved in days. I started to follow them inside, but one officer held up his hand. Ma'am, please stay outside. This is a potential crime scene. I stood on the porch. Mrs. Patterson put her hand on my shoulder. We listened to the officers moving through the house. Living room, clear. Kitchen, clear. Bedroom, clear. Bathroom, empty. Then a different voice. Sharper. There's blood on the carpet here. And signs of a struggle. My legs went weak. Another officer called out. I've got a basement door. It's padlocked from the outside. Padlocked. From the outside. I couldn't stay back anymore. I pushed past the officer at the door and ran inside. Down the hallway. I saw them gathered near a door I'd never noticed before. A heavy-duty padlock hung from a metal latch. One officer was cutting through it with bolt cutters. The lock snapped. The officer pulled the door open and called down into the darkness. Police! Is anyone down there? A muffled sound. Faint. Like something hitting against metal. A groan. The officers rushed down the stairs. I followed despite their protests. Someone flipped a light switch. Fluorescent bulbs flickered on. And I saw them. David and Sarah. Tied to the water pipes. Duct tape across their mouths. Hair matted with sweat. Clothes filthy. Faces pale and hollow. Sarah's wrists were bruised and raw. David had dried blood on the side of his head. Sarah's eyes met mine. Wide. Desperate. Tears began streaming down her face. I ran to her, dropped to my knees, put my hands on her face. Oh my God. Oh my God. Baby. I'm here. I'm here. The officers cut the ropes, peeled the duct tape from their mouths as gently as they could. Sarah gasped for air. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. David coughed violently, his whole body shaking. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They put Sarah and David on stretchers, started IVs, checked their vital signs. I climbed into the ambulance with Sarah, held her hand. It was ice cold. On the way to the hospital, she tried to speak. Her voice came out raspy and broken. Mom. Marcus. And his brother. They were going to kill us. Tonight. I squeezed her hand. Don't talk, sweetheart. Save your strength. But she kept going, words tumbling out between gasps. Dad found something. Papers. Marcus forged his signature. Life policies worth millions. Marcus would collect if we died. My stomach turned. Dad confronted him. Marcus called someone. A man showed up. Big guy. Bald. They beat Dad. Knocked him out. Dragged him to the basement. Sarah's face crumpled. Fresh tears ran down her temples. When I got home, Marcus told me there was a leak downstairs. I went down to check. The man grabbed me from behind, covered my mouth. I saw Dad tied up in the corner. I tried to fight, but he was too strong. They taped my mouth, tied me up next to Dad. The paramedic placed an oxygen mask over her face. She pushed it aside for a moment. 3 days, Mom. In the dark. Marcus brought food twice a day. Just enough to keep us alive. He said he was sorry. Said he didn't have a choice. That Kyle threatened him. Said if Marcus backed out, Kyle would kill him first, then finish us anyway. She started crying harder. But Kyle, the other man, he came down once. He looked at us and said, "Don't worry. It'll be over soon." Marcus was terrified of him. I could see it. Kyle had complete control. I heard them last night, arguing upstairs. Kyle said they'd take us to the canyon tonight. Stage an accident, burn the car. Marcus tried to say we should wait, but Kyle grabbed him by the throat. Said, "We do this now, or I do you next." The mask went back over her face, her eyes closed, exhausted. I sat there in the ambulance, holding my daughter's hand, feeling rage and terror and relief all colliding inside my chest. They'd planned to kill her. Tonight. If I'd arrived tomorrow, I would have been too late. At the hospital, doctors examined Sarah and David. Severe dehydration, malnutrition. Sarah had ligature marks on her wrists and ankles. David had a concussion from the blow to his head. They admitted both of them for observation. A detective arrived around 3 in the afternoon. Detective Morrison. Mid-50s, graying hair, sharp eyes. He pulled up a chair next to Sarah's bed and took out a notebook. "Miss Thompson, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell me everything you remember." Sarah's voice was stronger now, though still hoarse. She told him about Marcus losing his job 6 months ago. His tech startup had failed. He owed hundreds of thousands to banks, investors, credit cards. He'd hidden it from her for months, kept pretending to go to work every day. I found out when the bank called about the mortgage. We were months behind. I confronted him. He promised he'd fix it. 2 weeks after that conversation, Marcus bought a life policy on Sarah. She didn't know about it until later. "When did you become suspicious?" Morrison asked. "When he started acting strange, distant. He'd disappear for hours. Wouldn't tell me where he'd been. Then, one day I came home early and heard him on the phone. He was saying, 'It's the only way out.' I thought he meant bankruptcy." She looked at me. Her eyes were red and swollen. "I didn't think he meant murder." Morrison wrote everything down. Then he asked about Kyle. Sarah explained that Kyle was Marcus's older brother. He'd been in prison for fraud. Got out a year ago. Marcus had mentioned Kyle was helping him with some business opportunities. "What kind of opportunities?" Morrison asked. He never said. I should have pushed harder. I should have known something was wrong. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "This isn't your fault, baby." Detective Morrison turned to David. "Mr. Reed, can you walk me through what happened when you arrived?" David told him about finding the documents, about Marcus catching him, about Kyle showing up and hitting him with a gun, about the basement, starving, terrified, listening to Marcus and Kyle argue about when to kill them. Morrison closed his notebook. "We've issued a BOLO for both Marcus Thompson and Kyle Thompson. We're tracking their phones, checking border crossings. But Mr. Reed, Mrs. Reed, these men are dangerous. If you see them or hear from them, call us immediately. Don't approach them." I nodded. But I'd already made a decision. The police would do their job. But I wasn't going to sit back and wait. I needed to act. I needed evidence that would guarantee Marcus and Kyle never walked free. That night, while Sarah slept and David rested, I sat in the hospital waiting room with my laptop. I logged into our family phone account. I was still on the billing for Sarah's line. I started downloading every text message, every call log, every location ping from the past 6 months. If Marcus had left a trail, I was going to find it. I spent the entire night going through Sarah's phone records, text messages, call logs, location data. I had access because I'd set up the family plan years ago and never removed myself as the account administrator. Most of it was mundane. Grocery lists, dinner plans, work schedules. But then I found something. A series of deleted text messages between Marcus and an unknown number. They were still backed up in the cloud. The first message was from 3 months ago. The policies are active, 6 months old now, no red flags. A response from Marcus. Are you sure this will work? I've done this before. Trust the process. What about timing? After the holidays. Less suspicious. People travel. Accidents happen. I took screenshots of everything. I kept scrolling. Found another exchange from 2 months ago. Marcus. What if someone gets suspicious? Unknown number, they won't. Just stick to the plan. Marcus. My brother is getting impatient. Unknown number, tell him to wait. Rushing leads to mistakes. And then, 2 days ago, a final message from the unknown number to Marcus. Your brother is getting impatient. Move faster. Whoever this person was, they knew Kyle. They were coordinating with both brothers. A third conspirator. I tried to trace the number through Google, through social media, through reverse lookup services. Nothing. It was a prepaid phone. No registered owner. But I noticed something else in the location data. Sarah's phone had been at a specific address multiple times over the past few months. A coffee shop called Julie's Corner Cafe. The visits were always during work hours, when Sarah should have been at her office. I looked up the cafe. It was owned by someone named Julie Brennan. Julie. My stomach dropped. Julie Brennan was my friend. Had been my friend for 15 years. We'd met at a book club. Had coffee together once a month. She'd cried at my father's funeral. She'd been there when David and I almost split up 5 years ago. I stared at the screen. Sarah's phone at Julie's cafe. 3 times in 2 months. Each visit lasting 2 to 3 hours. I called Sarah's room. She answered. Groggy. Honey, did you ever meet with Julie? At her cafe? She was quiet for a moment, thinking. Julie? Your friend Julie? No, I don't think so. Why? Your phone was there. Multiple times. That's weird. I've never been to her cafe. Wait. She stopped. Marcus borrowed my phone a few times. Said his was broken. He needed it for GPS or something. My hands started shaking. Marcus had been meeting someone at Julie's cafe, using Sarah's phone so it wouldn't show up on his records. Julie. My friend Julie. I pulled up her number, almost called. Then stopped. If she was involved, I couldn't let her know I suspected anything. Not yet. I went to the police station at 6 in the morning. Detective Morrison was just arriving, coffee in hand. I showed him everything. The text messages, the location data. My suspicions about Julie. He studied the screenshots carefully. This is excellent work, Mrs. Reed. This unknown number could be our third conspirator. And if your instinct about Julie Brennan is correct, we need to move carefully. What do we do? I asked. We investigate. Quietly. We get phone records for Julie's number, check her financials, see if there's a connection. But Mrs. Reed, if this woman is involved, she's dangerous. Don't confront her alone. I won't, I said. But I was already planning my next move. I left the police station and drove straight to Julie's Corner Cafe. It was 10 in the morning. Sunday. The cafe was quiet. Only a few customers scattered at tables, reading newspapers, typing on laptops. Julie stood behind the counter, making espresso. She looked up when I walked in. Her face lit up with what looked like genuine concern. Linda! Oh my God! I heard about Sarah and David on the news. Are they okay? I've been trying to call you. She came around the counter, tried to hug me. I stepped back. Her smile faltered. Just slightly. Are they all right? She asked again. They're alive, I said. No thanks to Marcus and his brother. I still can't believe Marcus would do something like that. He always seemed so normal when he came in here. I watched her face carefully. When was the last time you saw Marcus? She blinked. Looked away for a second. I don't remember exactly. Maybe a few months ago? He came in for coffee once or twice. Just once or twice? Yeah, I think so. Why? I stepped closer, lowered my voice so the other customers wouldn't hear. Julie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. As my friend. Of course, anything. Did Marcus ever talk to you about money problems? About debt? About insurance? Her expression didn't change. But something flickered in her eyes. Just for a moment. No. Why would he talk to me about that? I pulled out my phone. Showed her the location data. Because phone records show he met you here multiple times over the past few months. Long meetings. 2 hours. 3 hours. And I know you used to work in insurance, Julie. Before you opened this cafe. Her face went pale. She glanced at the customers, then back at me. Linda, I don't know what you're implying, but I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. Were you involved in Marcus's plan? She tried to laugh. It came out hollow. That's ridiculous. I would never. I opened another screenshot. Showed her the text messages from the unknown number. These messages, about insurance policies, about timing, about making it look like an accident. The police are tracing this number right now, Julie. If it's yours, they'll know within hours. She stared at the screen. The color drained completely from her face. I don't know what that is, she whispered. The police will subpoena your phone records, your bank statements, your emails. If you were involved, they'll find out. But if you tell me the truth now, if you help me understand what happened, maybe there's a way to make this less worse than it's going to be. She took a step back. Her hand gripped the edge of the counter. Linda, you don't understand. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. I swear to God, I didn't want. She stopped herself. Looked at me, with tears welling up. I had no choice. I'm drowning in debt, Linda. Gambling debt. Bad investments. I owe people. Dangerous people. And they threatened me. They said if I didn't pay, they'd... So you decided to help kill my daughter instead? Julie shook her head violently. No, it wasn't supposed to be like that. Marcus came to me 3 months ago. He was desperate. Said he needed money. Needed a way out. He knew I used to work in insurance. He asked if there was a way to get money quickly. And you told him how. I told him about life insurance policies, how they work, how long you have to wait before filing a claim. I said if someone wanted to fake a death, they'd need to be careful. Wait at least 6 months. Make it look like an accident. My stomach turned. You gave him a blueprint for murder. I thought it would just be talk. People say desperate things all the time. I didn't think he'd actually go through with it. But then, he came back. With his brother. Kyle. She wiped her eyes. Mascara smeared across her cheek. Kyle scared me. He said faking a death was too complicated. Said real bodies were easier than fake ones. I told him that was insane. But he threatened me. Said if I backed out, he'd tell the loan sharks about me. Make me a target. So you stayed involved. I was terrified. Kyle said if I didn't help, I was a loose end. And he deals with loose ends. I stared at her. This woman, I'd known for 15 years. Who'd sat at my kitchen table. Who'd laughed at my jokes. Who'd held my hand when I cried. You were my friend, Julie. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted Sarah to get hurt. I never wanted David to die. But you helped anyway. She sobbed. I was weak. I was selfish. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, showed her the screen. Recording in progress. 23 minutes. Her eyes went wide. You recorded this? Every word. Linda, please. You tried to have my daughter killed. You think I'd come here without protecting myself? I stopped the recording. Saved it. Sent a copy to Detective Morrison, right there in front of her. Julie collapsed into a chair, put her head in her hands. What happens now? Now? I put my phone away. Now you're going to tell the police everything. Every detail. Every conversation. Every plan. And if you're smart, you'll tell them where Marcus and Kyle are hiding. I walked out of that cafe and called Detective Morrison immediately. I have a confession. Audio recording. Julie Brennan is the third conspirator. And I know exactly how to get her to lead us to Marcus and Kyle. I met Detective Morrison at the police station 20 minutes later. He listened to the recording twice. Then he looked at me with something between admiration and concern. This is excellent evidence, Mrs. Reed. But we need to be careful. If we arrest Julie now, Marcus and Kyle might run. They could disappear completely. That's why I have a plan, I said. Julie told me they've stopped answering her calls. They know she's a liability now that Sarah and David were found alive. But what if she had something they needed? Something important enough to risk coming out of hiding? Morrison leaned forward. What are you thinking? Julie helped set up those insurance policies. That means she has documents. Forged signatures. Account information. Maybe even backup files on her computer. If we make Marcus and Kyle believe those documents are about to be found by police, they'll panic. They'll need to destroy the evidence. And they'll need Julie's help to do it. So we use Julie as bait. Exactly. But Julie doesn't know she's bait. We tell her if she cooperates fully, we'll consider a plea deal. We have her call Marcus and Kyle. Tell them the police came asking questions. Say she thinks they're going to get a search warrant for her cafe. Tell them they need to meet her tonight to destroy everything before it's too late. Morrison nodded slowly. And we'll be waiting. Yes. He thought about it for a moment. Then he stood up. Let me talk to the district attorney. If she agrees to the operation, we'll bring Julie in and make the offer. 2 hours later, Julie was sitting in an interrogation room. Her lawyer was present. Morrison played the recording I'd made, confronted her with the evidence. Julie broke down completely. Agreed to cooperate in exchange for consideration on sentencing. Morrison handed her a phone. Told her exactly what to say. She called Marcus first. Left a voicemail. Her voice shaking but following the script. Marcus, it's Julie. The police came to my cafe. They were asking about you. About insurance policies. I think they're going to get a warrant to search my place. We need to meet tonight. Midnight. At the cafe. We have to destroy everything. The paperwork, the computer files, all of it. If we don't, we're both going to prison. Then she called Kyle. Same message. The police set up the operation. Plainclothes officers would hide around the cafe. Surveillance vans 2 blocks away. When Marcus and Kyle arrived, they'd move in and make the arrest. Morrison looked at me. Mrs. Reed, you've done incredible work here. But from this point on, this is police business. I need you to stay away from the operation. These men are dangerous. I understand, I said. But I had no intention of staying away. That night, at 11:15, I drove to the neighborhood near Julie's cafe. Parked 2 blocks away in the shadows. I could see the unmarked police vehicles positioned around the building. I waited. At 11:45, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Kyle got out. He was big, just like in Mrs. Patterson's photo. He looked around, cautious, suspicious. Then he walked toward the cafe entrance. 5 minutes later, another car arrived. Marcus. Marcus got out of his car slowly. He looked terrible. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, like he hadn't slept in days. He kept glancing over his shoulder. Every shadow made him flinch. He started walking toward the cafe. I held my breath. Then everything went wrong. Kyle must have sensed something. He burst out of the cafe, grabbed Marcus by the arm, and they started running. Back toward their vehicles. Police, freeze. Officers emerged from their positions, weapons drawn. Kyle didn't stop. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. Back off or I'll shoot, he yelled. Marcus stumbled, tried to pull away from his brother, but Kyle grabbed him and held him close, used him as a shield. Kyle, what are you doing? Marcus's voice was high, panicked. He clearly hadn't known his brother was armed. "Shut up," Kyle said. He backed toward the SUV, dragging Marcus with him. The gun was pressed against Marcus's head now. Detective Morrison's voice came through a megaphone. "Mr. Thompson, Kyle Thompson, you're surrounded. There's no way out. Put down the gun, and this ends peacefully." "I'm not going back to prison," Kyle shouted. "I'll kill him if I have to." Marcus was crying now. "Kyle, please, don't do this. Just put it down." The standoff lasted maybe 30 seconds. It felt like hours. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. Then Julie ran out of the cafe. She wasn't supposed to do that. She was supposed to stay inside. "Kyle, stop!" she screamed. "It's over. They have everything. They have recordings, evidence, all of it." Kyle turned his head to look at her, just for a second. Just a fraction of a second. A shot rang out. Kyle screamed. The gun fell from his hand. A police sniper had shot him in the shoulder. He dropped to his knees. Officers swarmed in, tackled Kyle to the ground, cuffed him. Marcus tried to run but was brought down immediately. Handcuffs snapped onto his wrists. Julie stood frozen in the doorway, hands over her mouth. 2 officers approached her and cuffed her as well. I got out of my car and walked toward the scene. Morrison saw me coming. "Mrs. Reed, I told you to stay away." I didn't answer. I walked right past him, straight to where Marcus was on his knees, hands cuffed behind his back. Marcus looked up at me. His face was streaked with tears and dirt. "Linda, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked down at him. 4 years ago, this man had stood in a church and called me Mom. He'd asked for my blessing to marry Sarah. I remembered his voice shaking when he said, "I promise I'll take care of her. I'll protect her. Always." I'd hugged him that day, welcomed him into our family. Now he was on his knees in handcuffs. "You're not sorry for what you did," I said. My voice was cold, steady. "You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." He dropped his head. The police loaded all 3 of them into separate patrol cars. Kyle was taken to the hospital first for his gunshot wound, then to jail. Marcus and Julie went straight to holding cells. I stood on the sidewalk and watched the cars drive away. Detective Morrison came over and stood beside me. "You did good work, Mrs. Reed, really good. But don't ever put yourself in danger like that again." "I won't have to," I said. "They're caught now." I called Sarah from my car. She answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "It's over, sweetheart," I said, my voice cracked. "They're in custody, all 3 of them." She started crying on the other end of the line. But this time, they were tears of relief. The next morning, I met with a lawyer. Ellen Foster. She specialized in family law and violent crime cases. I told her everything. She listened, took notes, and nodded. "This is one of the strongest cases I've seen," she said. "You have motive, evidence, confessions, eyewitness testimony. Both criminal and civil cases are solid. I want them to pay," I said. "Not just jail time. I want them to lose everything. We'll file a civil suit for damages. Emotional distress, physical harm, attempted murder, medical bills, lost income. We're looking at millions. Marcus is bankrupt. Julie's cafe isn't worth much. How will we collect?" "We may not collect much," Ellen admitted. "But the judgment will follow them for life. They'll never rebuild. And more importantly, it's public record. Everyone will know what they did." "Good," I said. Ellen leaned forward. "There's one more thing. Before the trial, you should visit Marcus. Confront him directly. Get answers. Closure. Not through lawyers. Face to face." I hadn't thought about that. The idea made my stomach turn. But Ellen was right. "Yes," I said, "I need to look him in the eye." 3 days after the arrest, I drove to the county jail. Ellen had arranged a meeting. Marcus had agreed to see me. I sat in a small room with a metal table and 2 chairs, gray walls, fluorescent lights. A guard stood by the door. They brought Marcus in. Orange jumpsuit. Handcuffs. He looked thinner. Older. He sat down across from me and wouldn't meet my eyes. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. Look at me. He raised his head slowly. His eyes were red. I need you to explain something to me, I said. My voice was calm, controlled. 4 years ago, you stood in front of our family and friends. You took Sarah's hand. You promised to love her, to protect her, to honor her. I watched you cry when you said those vows. Were you lying then? Or did something change? He swallowed hard. I meant it. I loved her. I still don't. I cut him off. Don't say you still love her. Love doesn't tie someone up in a basement. Love doesn't plan their murder. I was desperate, he said. His voice cracked. The debt was crushing me. Every day, I got calls, threats. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think. I felt like I was drowning. So you decided Sarah should drown with you. He flinched. Do you remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago? I asked. You and Sarah came to our house. David carved the turkey. We all sat around the table. You said grace. You thanked God for family, for Sarah, for us welcoming you. Do you remember that? He nodded. A tear ran down his cheek. I do too, I said. I remember thinking, Sarah chose well. He's a good man. I was proud to call you my son-in-law. Proud that Sarah had someone who would stand by her. I leaned forward. But you weren't that man, were you? Maybe you never were. Or maybe the debt turned you into something else. I don't know which is worse. That you were always capable of this, or that you let money turn you into a monster. I'm not a monster, he whispered. You planned to kill my daughter, I said, each word sharp, precise. You held her captive. You starved her. You let your brother terrorize her. You discussed which road to use, which cliff, how to burn the car so the bodies would be unrecognizable. What do you call that? He put his head in his hands, sobbed. I call it evil, I continued. And the worst part? You didn't even have the courage to do it yourself. You needed Kyle. You needed Julie. You surrounded yourself with people willing to do what you were too weak to do alone. I stood up. Sarah will never forgive you. I will never forgive you. But I want you to know something. Every morning when you wake up in that cell, I want you to remember, you didn't just lose your freedom. You lost a family that loved you, a wife who adored you, a future that could have been beautiful. You traded all of that for nothing. Because you're still in debt. Still broke. Still nobody. Except now, you're nobody in a cage. I walked to the door. The guard opened it. Marcus called out behind me. Linda, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stopped. Looked back at him one last time. I know you are. But sorry doesn't bring back the 3 years Sarah will spend in therapy. Sorry doesn't erase the nightmares. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry is just a word you say when you've already destroyed everything. I walked out. The door locked behind me. I never saw Marcus again. 2 weeks later, we went to the preliminary hearing. Sarah was discharged from the hospital after 3 days, David after 2. They were physically recovered but still healing in other ways. We arrived at the courthouse on a cold Tuesday morning. Inside, we sat in the gallery. Then they brought them in. Marcus, Kyle, and Julie. All 3 wearing orange jumpsuits. Hands cuffed. Marcus looked thin. Broken. He glanced our way once, then immediately looked down. Kyle sat perfectly still. His face showed nothing. No fear. No remorse. Julie was crying before the judge even entered. The charges were read aloud. For each defendant, conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, assault, forgery, insurance fraud, weapons violations. The judge asked each of them how they pleaded. Kyle, not guilty. His voice was flat, defiant. Julie, not guilty. She could barely get the words out through her sobs. Then Marcus. He was silent for a long time. His lawyer whispered something to him. Marcus shook his head. Finally, he spoke. Guilty. The courtroom went still. Marcus's lawyer requested a sidebar. After several minutes of hushed discussion, the prosecutor addressed the court. Your Honor, the defendant Marcus Thompson has agreed to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a recommendation of 20 years without parole and full cooperation in testifying against Kyle Thompson and Julia Brennan. The judge turned to us. Does the family wish to make a statement? Ellen nodded to me. I stood up. 20 years is not enough for what he did, I said. But if his testimony helps put the other two away for life, then I accept it. The judge accepted the plea deal. Marcus was let out. As he passed our row, he looked at Sarah. She turned away. 1 week later, Julie's lawyer made a deal too. She would testify against Kyle in exchange for 25 years instead of life without parole. Julie's deposition was recorded. I watched through a one-way mirror. Kyle was the driving force, she said, crying. He insisted they had to die. Marcus was weak. I was scared. But Kyle was evil. He threatened both of us, said if we backed out, he'd kill us too. With Marcus and Julie both testifying against Kyle, the case was overwhelming. But Kyle still refused to plead guilty. His lawyer announced he wanted a jury trial. That meant we'd have to testify. In front of him. Kyle's trial began 3 months later. The courtroom was packed. Kyle sat at the defense table wearing a suit. His eyes were still cold, still predatory. The first 2 days were evidence presentation. Photos of the basement, the ropes, the duct tape, the forged documents. On day 3, Sarah took the stand. I watched my daughter walk to the witness box. She wore a simple blue dress. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Miss Thompson, can you tell the court what happened on the evening of November 10th? Sarah took a breath. Then she told them everything. About Marcus asking her to check the basement. About Kyle grabbing her from behind. About 3 days tied up in the dark. Did Kyle Thompson come to the basement? Once. On the second day. I tried to ask him why. He pulled the tape off my mouth and said, "Money. It's always about money." Then he taped it shut again. On the third night, did you hear Kyle and Marcus talking? Yes. Kyle said, "We do it tomorrow. Drive them to the canyon, stage the accident, burn the car." That's when I knew. We were going to die. The prosecutor asked one more question. Miss Thompson, do you see the man who grabbed you, who tied you up, who held you captive, in this courtroom? Sarah looked directly at Kyle. Yes. That's him. Kyle stared back. Expressionless. After Sarah, David took the stand. He described finding the documents. Being attacked by Kyle. The basement. The fear. What went through your mind during those 3 days? The prosecutor asked. I thought about my daughter, David said. His voice rough with emotion. She was tied up right next to me, crying, terrified. And I couldn't protect her. That's the worst feeling a father can have. Kyle's lawyer tried to undermine him during cross-examination. Mr. Reed, did Kyle Thompson ever explicitly say he was going to kill you? David looked at the lawyer. Then, at Kyle. He didn't need to. When someone kidnaps you, starves you, and discusses burning your body, the message is clear. Finally, I was called to testify. I walked to the stand, took the oath, sat down. Kyle watched me the entire time. I forced myself to look back at him. The prosecutor asked me to describe finding Sarah and David. I saw them tied to the pipes, I said. My voice was steady. They were filthy, weak, terrified. My daughter looked at me with eyes that said she'd thought she'd never see me again. That image will stay with me for the rest of my life. What impact has this had on your family? It's destroyed our sense of safety. My daughter can't sleep without nightmares. My husband jumps at sudden noises. I check the locks on my doors obsessively. We're afraid to trust people. Afraid to let our guard down. I turned and looked directly at Kyle. You tried to take everything from me. My daughter, my husband, my family's future. For money. I hope every single day you spend in prison, you think about that. I hope it haunts you." Kyle's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker. After 3 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the foreperson stood. In the case of the state versus Kyle Thompson, on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts. 2 weeks later, we returned to court for sentencing. All 3 defendants were sentenced on the same day. Kyle was brought in first. The judge looked down at him from the bench. "Mr. Thompson, you orchestrated a plan to murder 2 innocent people for financial gain. You showed no remorse throughout this trial, no empathy, no regard for human life." The sentence came down. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Additionally, 25 years for kidnapping, 10 years for assault, 5 years for weapons violations. All sentences concurrent. You will spend the rest of your natural life behind bars. Kyle showed no reaction. He was let out without looking at anyone. Next was Julie. She was crying before the judge even spoke. "Miss Brennan, you played a crucial role in this conspiracy. Your knowledge made this plot possible. However, you cooperated with authorities and showed genuine remorse." The sentence: 25 years in state prison, without the possibility of parole. Julie collapsed into sobs. "I'm sorry. Linda, Sarah, David, I'm so sorry. I destroyed our friendship. I nearly destroyed your family." I sat in the gallery and said nothing. Finally, Marcus. The judge's voice was firm. "Mr. Thompson, you betrayed your wife in the most profound way imaginable. You chose money over her life. While you cooperated with authorities, that cooperation does not erase the severity of your crimes." The sentence: 20 years without parole, as agreed. Marcus looked back at Sarah. She turned her face away. We walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sunlight. Sarah let out a long breath. "It's really over," she said. "Yes," I told her. "It's really over." But I knew the truth. The legal battle was over. Justice had been served. But the healing would take much longer. Ellen filed our civil lawsuit. We sued Marcus, Kyle, and Julie for $8 million. Emotional distress, physical injuries, medical expenses, lost income, pain and suffering. The civil trial was short. The defendants were already convicted criminals. Their lawyers had little to work with. The judge ruled in our favor. Joint and several liability, $8 million. We'd never collect most of it. They had no money. But Ellen was right. It was on record now. A permanent reminder. During the trial, I read an impact statement. "Your Honor, this isn't about money. This is about acknowledgement. Marcus, Kyle, and Julie tried to erase my family for profit. They failed. But the scars remain. The financial judgment is a reminder, a permanent record that you can't destroy lives without paying a price. These 3 people took our safety, our peace, our sense of normalcy. The least they can do is carry this debt for the rest of their lives." The judge agreed. The judgment stood. As we left the courthouse, Sarah asked me a question. "Do you think they'll ever understand what they did to us?" I thought about it. Then answered honestly. Kyle won't. Julie might. And Marcus will spend every day in prison wishing he'd made a different choice. But understanding doesn't undo harm. 1 month after the sentencing, I did something I'd been planning since the arrests. Something that had nothing to do with courts or lawyers. Something personal. Sarah and Marcus had many mutual friends, a large social circle, people who'd been at their wedding, who'd celebrated holidays with them. Most of them had heard about the arrest. But many didn't know the full story. I organized a gathering, called it a healing circle for Sarah. Invited 30 people. Friends, former colleagues, extended family. People who'd known Marcus as the charming, successful entrepreneur. We met at a community center. I rented the space, set up chairs in a circle. Everyone came. They came to support Sarah, to show love, to understand. I stood in the center of that circle. Sarah sat beside me. David, on her other side. And I told them everything. Not the sanitized version, not the legal language, the truth. 4 months ago, Marcus Thompson, a man we welcomed into our family, made a decision. He decided that Sarah's life was worth millions. And David's life was worth the same. He decided that money was more valuable than the woman he'd promised to love and protect. I showed them photos. The ones from the police file that had been released to us. The basement, the ropes, the padlock. My daughter and husband were tied up in darkness. Starving. Terrified. Listening to Marcus and his brother discuss which road to use to kill them. Which cliff would hide the bodies best. I watched their faces. Shock, horror, tears. Marcus forged my husband's signature on documents. He researched how to stage accidents. He scouted locations. And when my husband discovered what he was planning, Marcus called his brother. And together, they made the decision. Not just fraud. Murder. I pulled out copies of the court documents. The guilty plea. The testimony transcripts. The evidence logs. I'm sharing this with you because Marcus was good at pretending, good at being charming, good at making people believe he was someone he wasn't. And I want you to know the truth. Not rumors. Not speculation. The documented, proven, court-verified truth. I passed the documents around the circle. Some of you might think I'm being cruel. That Marcus has already been punished. But this isn't about punishment. This is about truth. And about making sure that no one, ever, says but he seemed like such a nice guy. Because he wasn't. He was a man capable of planning the murder of his own wife. Sarah stood up beside me. Her voice was steady. I loved him, she said. I trusted him completely. And he betrayed that, in the worst way imaginable. I want you all to know this, so you can protect yourselves, so you can recognize the signs. So you can trust your instincts when something feels wrong. One by one, people came up to Sarah, hugged her, cried with her, apologized for not seeing it, for not knowing. And one by one, they left that room, knowing exactly who Marcus Thompson was. The next week, 3 of them wrote letters to the parole board. For the record. Documenting the impact. Making sure that in 20 years, when Marcus became eligible for parole review, there would be voices saying, no, never, not ever. That was my revenge. Not violence, not cruelty. Just truth. Public. Undeniable. Permanent. 2 months after the public gathering, Sarah made her own decision about revenge. Marcus had written her 5 letters from prison. She'd refused to open any of them. They sat in a drawer in her apartment, unopened, unread. But one evening, she called me. Mom, I want to do something. And I need you there when I do it. We met at her apartment the next day. She pulled out all 5 letters, laid them on the kitchen table. I'm going to read them, she said. All of them. And then I'm going to respond. Once. Final. And I'm never thinking about him again. I sat beside her as she opened the first envelope. The letter was full of apologies. Excuses. I was desperate. I wasn't thinking clearly. I never stopped loving you. She read it aloud. Her voice was steady. The second letter was similar. More apologies, more justifications. The third letter was different, angrier. You'll never understand the pressure I was under. The threats. You had your parents to fall back on. I had nothing. Sarah's jaw tightened. But she kept reading. The fourth letter went back to pleading. Please visit me. Please let me explain in person. I need you to understand. The fifth letter was short. I know you hate me. I hate myself too. I just want you to know. I'm sorry. She finished reading. Folded the letters. Put them back in their envelopes. Then she pulled out a piece of paper and began writing. Marcus, I read your letters, all 5. And I want you to know something. I don't hate you. Hate requires energy, requires thought, requires emotion. And I have none of those things left to give you. You are nothing to me now. Not my husband, not my friend, not even my enemy. You're just a person who once existed in my life, and no longer does. You wanted me to understand the pressure you were under. I understand it. I just don't care. Because millions of people face debt, face pressure, face desperation, and they don't tie up their wives in basements. They don't plan murders. They make different choices. You made yours. I'm making mine. My choice is to forget you ever existed. Don't write to me again. I won't read it. Don't ask anyone to contact me on your behalf. I won't respond. You had me for 4 years. You'll never have me again. Not my forgiveness. Not my understanding. Not even my anger. You get nothing. Goodbye, Marcus. She signed it. Put it in an envelope. Sealed it. Addressed it to the prison. We walked to the mailbox together. She dropped it in. How do you feel? I asked. Free, she said. 1 year after the trials, life looked different. Not normal. Different. Sarah had divorced Marcus. The paperwork went through quickly, since he didn't contest it. She moved into a small apartment near David and me. Close enough that we could see each other daily, but far enough that she had her own space. Her independence. She was still going to therapy every week. Some days were good. She'd smile, laugh, make plans for the future. Other days were hard. She'd wake up screaming from nightmares about the basement, about the rope cutting into her wrists, about Kyle's cold voice. David had recovered physically. The concussion healed. The bruises faded. But he still jumped when someone walked up behind him unexpectedly. Still checked the locks on the doors twice before bed. One night, about 6 months after the trials, I found him sitting in the dark living room at 2 a.m. Just sitting, staring at nothing. I sat down beside him. Didn't say anything, just took his hand. After a long silence, he spoke. I keep thinking about those 3 days. I was supposed to protect her. I'm her father. And I couldn't do anything. I just lay there on that concrete floor, tied up, watching her cry. You survived, I said. That's what mattered. You both survived. Because of you. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. If you hadn't come, if you hadn't pushed, if you hadn't investigated, we'd be dead. Linda. Sarah and I would be dead. I squeezed his hand. We protected each other. You found those documents. That's what started everything. And almost got us killed. And saved your lives. I leaned my head on his shoulder. We're a team. We always have been. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I love you. I love you too. We sat like that for a long time. Just holding each other in the dark. 2 people who'd been through hell and somehow made it out together. I went to therapy too. Learned that healing isn't linear. That betrayal from people you trust isn't predictable. We had dinner together every Sunday. The 3 of us. Sometimes we talked about what happened. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we just sat together in comfortable silence, grateful to be alive and together. One evening, about 13 months after the rescue, Sarah and I were sitting on my back porch drinking tea. She was quieter than usual, thoughtful. Finally, she spoke. Mom, I've been thinking. I want to write about what happened, not for revenge or attention, but to help other people who've been betrayed, who've survived something like this. To let them know they're not alone. I looked at my daughter. She'd been through hell, but she was still here, still fighting, still trying to find meaning in the pain. That's a beautiful idea, sweetheart, I said. Will you help me? I don't think I can do it alone. I need your perspective, your strength. Of course, we'll do it together. We started writing the next week. Slowly at first, Sarah would write about the basement, about the fear. I would write about the investigation, about the trial. We'd read each other's sections and cry and revise and keep going. It wasn't easy. Some nights, Sarah couldn't write at all. Some nights, I'd sit at my computer and stare at the blank screen. But we kept at it. Because telling our story felt important, not just for us, but for anyone else who might be going through something similar. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were learning to live again. 18 months after the sentencing, Sarah received a letter. It came from the state prison. From Marcus. She didn't open it right away. Just left it on her kitchen table for 3 days. Looked at it every time she walked past. Finally, on the 4th day, she called me. "Mom, Marcus sent me a letter. I don't know if I should read it." "You don't have to," I told her. "You don't owe him anything, not even your attention." "I know. But part of me is curious. Part of me wants to know what he has to say." "Then open it. But know that you can stop reading at any point. You're in control here, not him." She opened it while we were on the phone. Read it silently first, then read it aloud to me. "Sarah, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to respond. But I need to write it anyway. Every day in here, I think about what I did, about how I betrayed you, about how I almost killed you. There's no excuse, no justification. I was weak, desperate, and evil. I wish I could go back and be the man you thought I was. The man who promised to protect you. But I wasn't that man. I don't know if I ever was. I'm writing because I heard you're writing a book about what happened. I think that's brave. And I think you should tell the whole truth, including how pathetic and cowardly I was. People need to know. I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask that you find peace. That you move on and find happiness. You deserve that. I'll be here for another 18 years. And every one of those days, I'll wish I'd made a different choice." Sarah finished reading. There was silence on the line for a long moment. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "Nothing," she said. "He wants forgiveness. Or maybe he just wants to feel better about himself. But I don't owe him that. I don't owe him anything. You don't. I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to visit. I'm not going to think about him anymore. He's part of my past, and I'm moving forward." That night, Sarah burned the letter in her fireplace. She called me afterward. "I needed to let him go," she said. "Not for him, for me." 2 years after the rescue, our book was published. We called it Betrayed, a mother and daughter's story of survival. It told the whole story. From the moment I drove to Sarah's house and saw Mrs. Patterson with that photo, to the basement rescue, to my investigation and confrontation with Julie, to the trials, to our ongoing healing. We didn't hide anything. Not the fear, not the rage, not the nightmares that still woke us up at night. The response surprised us. Letters arrived from readers across the country. Women who'd survived domestic violence. Men who'd been betrayed by business partners. Parents who'd lost children to violence. People who'd been trapped, terrified, certain they wouldn't survive. One woman wrote, "I thought I was alone. Your book showed me I'm not." Another wrote, "Thank you for reminding me to trust my instincts. You saved your family because you acted. I need to do the same." Sarah and I were invited to speak at events, domestic violence organizations, victim advocacy groups, law enforcement trainings. We talked about recognizing warning signs, about trusting your gut when something feels wrong, about the importance of acting quickly when someone you love is in danger. The book became a regional bestseller, not because it was sensational, but because it was honest. We didn't sugarcoat the trauma. We didn't pretend we were fine now. We talked about the ongoing struggle, the therapy, the hypervigilance, the broken trust. One afternoon, Sarah and I did a book signing at a local bookstore. A young woman approached us, tears streaming down her face. "Your story saved my life," she said. "I recognized the signs in my own relationship. The financial secrecy, the mood changes, the casual questions about life insurance. I got out before it was too late. Because of you." Sarah hugged her. So did I. That's when I understood. Our nightmare hadn't just been suffering, it had become something that could help others, something that could save lives. 3 years after that terrible week, I stood in that same bookstore watching Sarah sign copies of our book. A young mother held her daughter's hand and told Sarah, "Thank you for being brave enough to tell your story." Sarah smiled. a real smile. The first truly peaceful smile I'd seen on her face in years. We'd turned our worst nightmare into something meaningful. And that felt like a different kind of justice. 3 years after the rescue, I sat in my living room looking through old photo albums, pictures of Sarah as a child, her high school graduation, her wedding day to Marcus. I used to avoid that last album. Couldn't stand to see his face, to remember how happy she looked that day, knowing what he'd do to her later. But now I could look at those photos and see them differently. Not as a lie, but as a moment in time. Sarah had been happy that day. That was real, even if Marcus's promises weren't. Sarah had remarried. A good man named Daniel. Patient, kind, honest. He knew everything about her past. About the basement, the nightmares, the triggers. He never pushed her. Never demanded she get over it. He just loved her, steadily and completely. They'd given me a granddaughter, Emma, 6 months old. Perfect and tiny, and completely unaware of the darkness that had nearly prevented her existence. I watched Sarah hold Emma, singing softly to her, and I thought about everything we'd learned. Betrayal can come from the people you trust most. Marcus was my son-in-law. Julie was my best friend for 15 years. And both of them were willing to let my family die for money. That knowledge changed me. Made me more cautious. But real love survives even the darkest betrayals. David and I grew closer through this. Sarah found strength she didn't know she had. Our family bond became unbreakable because we'd been tested in the worst possible way and survived. Justice doesn't erase pain. Kyle was in prison for life. Julie had 25 years. Marcus had 20. But knowing they were locked up didn't stop Sarah's nightmares. Didn't stop David from flinching at loud noises. Healing takes time. Longer than you think. And that's okay. Forgiveness isn't mandatory. People talk about forgiveness like it's required for healing. It's not. I haven't forgiven Marcus or Julie. Maybe I never will. And that doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me human. Most importantly, I learned that the greatest gift we have is time with the people we love. Every dinner with Sarah and Daniel and Emma. Every laugh with David. Every quiet morning drinking coffee on the porch. Those are the moments that matter. We still have hard days. But we also have good days. Days filled with Emma's laughter. Days when Sarah smiles without that shadow of trauma in her eyes. Days when our family simply exists together, safe and whole. The legal battle is over. The sentences are served. The book is written. But life continues. And that's what matters most. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to our story. If you recognize yourself in it, if something feels wrong in your life, trust that feeling, act, don't wait. You're not alone. Survival is possible. Healing is possible. We're proof. Share this story. Leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Stay safe. Hold your loved ones close. And never take tomorrow for granted.